Is that all right, Sonny? Perfect. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Apuesto que va a tener preguntas, Mike. I don't know why. Well, okay, we're recording already. Recording in progress. So, thank you everyone for being here. And let's begin with the first presentation. Alexandra Gabriel Zúñiga, and the title of the research, I don't know if you have already changed it a little bit, but until yesterday, it was the measurement of duration of sounds in intermediate students in Guadalajara before and after the implementation of an asynchronous pronunciation course. And of course, the thesis director is Dr. Ramos. So go ahead.
Okay, so thank you very much for the introduction. Well, my name is, as was mentioned before, Alexandra Gabriel Zúñiga. And since my title was already read, I'm gonna skip to the next slide. Sorry. Okay, so these are the topics that I'm gonna be talking about. And well, the first one is about the introduction. As far as we know, English is the lingua franca, well, all over the world. Why is this so? Because native speakers and non-native speakers of English interact with each other in this language. They use English for personal, professional, academic purposes, or even for business. So all of these speakers have different phonemic repertoires. What does it mean? That the E sound in Spanish is differently pronounced and assimilated. It's differently pronounced and assimilated as the English E and I sound vowels. So, and this pronunciation and this assimilation can cause unintelligibility between speakers. And what happens if non-native speakers go abroad? Well, some of the consequences of being unintelligible are that they might have fewer job opportunities, they might be discriminated, maybe they are seen as less capable, not credible, or not intelligent enough. Some of them, they might be ridiculed for mispronouncing. In the case of binational speakers, some of them, they are not regarded as native speakers. Why? Because they don't reach the milliseconds that native speakers reach in the duration of phonemes, which I will be talking about this a little bit later. So normally, when people want to learn another language, they take classes. And what happens in these classes? Well, there's a preference for other language topics, like, for example, grammar, vocabulary, conversation over phonetics or over pronunciation. Why? Because there's a limited time for teachers to teach all of the topics that they have to teach within a year or a semester. Some of the teachers, they also lack of this phonetic or phonology knowledge, and they don't know how to teach it. And one solution is providing them with an asynchronous course, so that this course can teach the students the correct training of the pronunciation, that they can have many opportunities to practice the sounds. So I have 3 research objectives. The first one is to measure the milliseconds of the E and E sounds in intermediate students when reading a list of words with these 2 phonemes. And then they're gonna be receiving an asynchronous course where they practice and they will be explained the pronunciation of these 2 sounds. After that, the milliseconds of the native speakers and non-native speakers will be compared because they are going to be reading again a list of words. So there will be a comparison between native speakers and non-native speakers. So what is the intention of this research? Well, it's to improve pronunciation, articulation, and intelligibility. And it's useful for students, teachers, and institutions. In the first place, students, because they are gonna be improving their pronunciation regarding these two sounds, the E and the E sound. And teachers, if they want so, they can also improve and take the advantage of improving their pronunciation. And also because of their lack of time, or because if they don't know how to teach phonetics and phonology, they can use technology in order to teach pronunciation. And institutions, if they want to emphasize more on pronunciation, they can also opt for this tool. And Google Classroom, well, since the pandemic started, many teachers and students have used Google Classroom, and they know how to use it and so on. So this is a good way to learn and practice in a remote way, because it's you can practice or you can learn whenever you want, wherever you want, in a more relaxed environment. And you will also receive feedback, maybe instantly because of certain applications that you're implementing in your course, or within a couple of days, or the same day. And well, in this research, I'm only focusing on the short and long vowel E. Why? Because I cannot cover all the 15 vowels that we have in English. So I'm just focusing on these two because of time reasons. And the measurements of the milliseconds would be measured by Pratt, by the program Pratt. So before mentioning the two studies that I'm going to be explaining about or introducing, let me just start with, I don't know what happened. Sorry. About the definition of duration. According to Scandera and Burley, it's the actual time taken in the articulation of a sound. So this means that the duration is given in Pratt in milliseconds or in seconds. This depends on you. And Perez Samano, she wanted to see whether Mexican speakers were or were not intelligible to native speakers of English. So she let the non-native speakers read a list of monosyllabic words. They were also recorded, and these recordings were given to native speakers, and they were listening to them, and they wrote down what they understood. Perez Samano, she also put these recordings into Pratt to measure the milliseconds of the aspirated sounds, which are okay. So the most difficult one for Mexican speakers was the sound. Why? Because they were 85% unintelligible. And the reason is because they didn't exceed the 35 milliseconds, and native speakers reach 55 milliseconds in aspiration. So they didn't even go beyond the 35 milliseconds. And the other study is Castellanos Martinez, which she wanted to see whether there was an improvement by giving students or participants a training of the aspirated sound, which they also had trouble with. And she focused more on articulatory gestures. And she divided her study into 3 sections: pre-test, training, and post-test. In the pre-test, she gave native speakers and non-native speakers a list of words. They were recorded. This is pretty similar to Perez Samano's. And she measured the voice onset time, which is when does the aspiration begin and when does it end. And this was measured also in Pratt. So the training was that they received an explanation of the aspirated and non-aspirated sounds, also the articulation. So they were giving like a complete course. And they were imitating the pronunciation of the aspiration, and they received feedback. The post-test was identical to the pre-test. And the results showed that there was an improvement in the aspiration. Here, well, these two studies are focusing more on consonants. I'm focusing on vowels, so that's why I'm explaining you a little bit about vowels. So vowels are voiced. Why? Because there is a vibration in the vocal folds when we pronounce them. And they are produced with little or no constriction of the air here in the vocal tract. Well, this is the vocal tract. And, well, Spanish speakers, they have usually trouble pronouncing the short vowel E sound. Why is it so? Because here we have two images. On the left, we have the English vowels, and on the right, we have the Spanish E sound. So these two sounds on the left, they have different positions. Well, if you imagine the tongue, it has different positions, so the articulation is different as in Spanish. So this is one of the problems that they have, the pronunciation or the articulation, and also because of the milliseconds, but I'm going to be talking this about a little bit later. So, and we found the short and long vowel E sound in minimal pairs. So minimal pairs are a pair of words that are different in meaning and in only one sound. For example, sit and sit. So these two sounds are also considered as high functional vowels. Why? Because the distinction between the E and E, the E and sounds have many more possible minimal pairs than the U and U. So, as I was mentioning before, English is the lingua franca, and English is used all over the world differently. Here we have the representation that from Krashu, that he says that there are three circles: inner, outer, and expanding circle. The inner circle are all these countries that have English as their mother tongue. The outer circle are those countries that have English as a second language. Expanding circle is, for example, Mexico, that has English as an additional language. So, and the question is here, do non-native speakers have to have a native speaker-like pronunciation? No, they don't. But they have to have an adequate mastery of their pronunciation in order to be intelligible enough for other speakers. And intelligibility is not inferring or deciphering the message from the context. It is also from the speaker's point of view to adequately pronounce the words so that others can understand you. And intelligibility can be measured with the program Praat, which, by the way, means it's a Dutch word, which means to speak. So these are not acronyms. This is a Dutch word. And this is just a screenshot of the program Praat. And here you can measure the milliseconds. You can see the intonation. You can analyze, synthesize, and modify speech. So, as I was mentioning before, the milliseconds are measured by Praat, but they are also different. For example, in English and Spanish, they are completely different. Akmajan et al. Measured the long vowel E sound, and it lasted 144 milliseconds for the word read. And the short vowel E measured 106 milliseconds for the word read. On the contrary, the Spanish E sound can last around 94 milliseconds, according to Muñoz Pacheco. And well,
minutes, Alexandra, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, CAT is a computer-assisted pronunciation teaching, which is used to teach pronunciation. And Google Classroom is a free web-based learning management system that can be used. And last but not least, my research is experimental and quantitative. Experimental, why? Because I have a pre-test, a treatment, and a post-test. And I'm going to be contrasting native speakers and non-native speakers. Quantitative, because I'm measuring the the milliseconds. It's pretty similar to Castellanos, Martinez, and Perez Amanos, which they use a pretest that non-native speakers will have to record themselves reading a list of minimal pairs containing these two sounds. And the measurements will be given into Pratt. They will receive a training where they are explaining the pronunciation, they are giving practice, and also feedback. And the post-test is identical to the pre-test, and they have the similar word list, and the audios will be given into Pratt in order to measure the difference between non-native speakers and native speakers. And I don't know how much time I have, but I'm done, and these are my references. And yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for watching and listening. So I think I'm on time, right, Sarah?
10 seconds, yeah.
Okay. Now I have finished.
Very good. Thank you, Alexandra. I'm going to stop your presentation so that I can see who wants to participate with some comments or questions. And it's time for just that, comments and questions for Alexandra and her research study. Well, if there's nobody, I think I'm going to begin. I'm going to begin with the methodology, and then with the naive comment question for you. It's true that your study is experimental, but I think you have to precise, of course, you're going to do it during the semester. You have to be more precise what kind of experimental study it is, since it is not a pure experimental, but more a pre-experimental study. You have only, I think, you are going to have only one group. It's true that you're going to have pre-test and post-test with the treatment, but this group is not arbitrary or aleatory, but you don't have that randomly created group. So it's not going to be a pure experimental. I think your study is going to be pre-experimental, and it would be interesting just to work on that. I mean, the methodological and theoretical justification of why it's going to be a pre-experimental. It's very good. I mean, it's valid and everything, but I think you have to be more precise on that for the next semester. Of course, for this one, it was perfect because you didn't have to work on the methodology. And a naive question is about the way you want to work with your group. You said that you're going to provide them a list of words. I'm not an expert on the topic, and please don't listen to me. It's just like a very, I repeat myself, but a naive comment. Why not working with natural or spontaneous productions? I know it's not the same because you don't have the words that you want to work with. However, I don't know. I think sometimes a list of words is just like produced in a very specific way, and spontaneous speech is produced in a more spontaneous way. So you would have just like more natural results. I insist. It's not my area, and Maggie is going, I think, is going to tell me something about it. Go ahead, Maggie. Thank you.
I would like Alexandra first try her answer, and then.
Okay.
Yes, Alex, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you, Maggie. Well, the list of minimal pairs is just for the measurement, but we can do this because I was reading Celce Murcia, and she also provides different techniques, like, for example, reading a poem, having minimal pairs. So it's like contextualize, or having tongue twisters. This can also be helpful. So I can also implement that in order to be like more, like you say, more natural or more spontaneous, because this happens, right? when they are producing the speech. So, but I don't know if Maggie wants to continue.
Yes, Alexandra, we talked about it, and we said that the realization of phonemes in connected speech is different from the realization of monosyllabic words on the one hand, and because in a way you are like reproducing a little bit the studies of Pérez Amano and yes, and then
Castellanos Martínez.
in monosyllabic words, these sounds behave differently. And what she wants to do is just to measure how these sounds are produced in monosyllabic words. That's the reason why. And it is a very controlled thing in that way.
It's because
yeah,
of
the technique is
measurement.
and it's very common. I think it's especially in English. I have seen that this is very common with the studies. Yeah, thank you. I think Angeline, you just raised your hand.
I did, but I mean, I don't know anything about this topic either. No,
No, go ahead.
thinking of the question you did, I was thinking of the readings we did for sociolinguistics and how they were doing that experiment that they asked about where are the shoes, and they always said in the fourth floor. So maybe asking questions that they will make them produce, but it's similar to what you were saying, Sarah. So that's why I lowered my hand, because they said no.
Yeah, Labovian experiment, which is valid and which is very interesting. The way you reproduce something that that is already very controlled, as Maggie said. Yeah. Any more questions or comments for Alexandra? Yeah, Jerry, Dr. Mockford, go ahead.
I was just a little bit confused about the native, non-native. If the native is not relevant, I don't think you should put so much emphasis on it. You know, I think it's because you're focusing on intelligibility. In one sense, we're not interested in the native speaker. So my question would be, why is that you do a comparison with native, non-native, and then say the native is not the model? I think it's more my observation is more clarity on what is the position. And I think if you're looking more at intelligibility, I think the native becomes less and less relevant. So like the three circles of Grashow, because the problem mentioning native speaker pronunciation, who is this native speaker that you're comparing it to? You know, is it American English, British English, Australian English? And obviously it should be British English, shouldn't it, Sarah, that we should be focusing on? Yeah,
I think you should be just like the ideal speaker, Jerry, of course.
exactly.
Yeah, there's no other model. I think your question was not a real question, because it has to be British English, of course.
Of course, there's no doubt. No, seriously, you see what I'm getting
Yes.
at? I think it's more clarity of the presentation, not, you know, if the native speaker's not really relevant, I wouldn't spend too much time. I'd go straight into what's intelligibility, non-native, and with that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, well, I was talking with Maggie, and I have to disappoint you, but we're more focusing on American accent, not the British accent. But if you want to be tested, you can.
So
If you want to be a role model, you can come and participate. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, because these participants are more used to the American sounds, and they have more to do with the USA rather than to Great Britain or to other accents. That's why I'm focusing more on American sounds.
which maybe you could start off at, you know, the beginning. The American sound is what? But again, what is intelligibility? Is intelligibility sounding like an American English, or is there an intelligible Mexican English that can be discerned?
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Any more questions or comments? We have just like 1 or 2 more minutes. But if there are no more comments or questions, then thank you very much, Alexandra. You have been the first one. It's
Thank you.
always a little bit
Yeah, stressful.
yes, it's stressful
I
to be the
know.
first one, but thank you very much. Congratulations, because the study is very interesting, and I loved you. You just try something. I mean, something experimental. It's not very common, so good for you. Very good.
No,
Excellent.
and it's really like challenging this
Yes.
this
Yes, it
research. Uh-huh.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you very much, Alexandra. And now we are going to have Ana Gabriela Camargo's presentation. Gabby, are you ready? Yes, okay. So the title of your presentation until today, it was the effect of task-based grammar teaching of English approach on young EFL learners, speaking performance, grammar accuracy, and fluency. And the thesis director is Dr. Sonny Castro Yañez. So Gabby, you can share your screen if you want, and the stage is all yours.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. Okay. So, like Alexander did, I think I don't need, oh no, I need to repeat the title because it changed a little bit. So now it's the effect of task-based grammar teaching of English approach on young EFL learners speaking performance, and we are working with fluency. Later on, I will explain the 4 aspects that we will cover with fluency. Okay. So this is what I'm going to go over this presentation. It sounds like a lot, but I think I can do it on time. Okay, so to start, we know that there are many teaching methods, like there's a huge variation of teaching methods for English, for languages, sorry, but I'm talking about 2 that I think are the most, one is the most common and the other one can be considered like a controversial one. Still, in general terms, grammar-based methodology is based on teaching and practicing grammar rules through drills, repetition, and it aims to give students the tools to gain more language knowledge without necessarily including the opportunity to perform in a communicative situation. Meanwhile, the communicative language teaching method states that language competence comes from not just learning the rules, and its aim is to help students communicate, sometimes with grammar errors, but again, for communicative language teaching, grammar is not like the base of what we are teaching. One clear example of this one, and this is important, is task-based language teaching, that it's focused on teaching to communicate and practicing and all that. So if we see these 2 methodologies, we can see that there is no real balance between teaching grammar and teaching how to, or helping students communicate. We either have one or the other. And the idea would be that a combination of both would give us this balance that it may be the most useful things for students to achieve their language goals or in their language learning. So there is a new proposal that is based on TBLT that I'm going to go over it in a few minutes. Oops. Okay, so right now, at this point for my research, this is the question that I'm aiming to answer. what is the effect of implementing task-based grammar teaching on young EFL students' fluency with two objectives: to describe the effect of using TBGT on young EFL students' fluency, and these are the 4 topics that I'm covering: grammatical accuracy, syntactic complexity, speed of speech production, and interactional language. And the second objective that we think it's really important to go over is to explore the impact of this teaching on young EFL students' speaking anxiety. It's a huge topic when we talk about students. So this task-based grammar teaching that I'm going to explain later, it has not been studied. There are many studies on the impact of task-based language teaching in the language classroom and the impact it has on fluency, but TBGT has not been studied, and specifically regarding speaking instruction, it has not been implemented in the Mexican EFL classroom. So this study aims to describe the effect that this teaching approach has on the students' language skills, and these 4 topics that I mentioned before: grammatical accuracy, syntactic complexity, the speed of speech production, and interactional language. And the idea is to help students develop their language competence and also help teachers find another teaching approach to use in class. So, what is task-based grammar teaching? Task-based grammar teaching, or TBGT for shorter, was born as a proposal in the book Task-Based Grammar Teaching of English, where cognitive grammar and task-based language teaching meet. This proposal was born from the idea of the author that grammar is necessary for language learning at the same level as, for example, lexis, and it should be considered as important. And for example, TBLT lacks this grammar instruction. So for TBLT, grammar is like the last resource, and it's only addressed in examples. And the idea is that students kind of like guess or it's like a deductive grammar. They understand, but they don't go over it. And TBGT presents this idea of, okay, we'll go over grammar after the instruction. So it's TBGT is still proposing like a variation of the task cycle that we have in TBLT. It follows the cycle, but it is based on a grammar-related topic. So all the tasks that we have during the cycle will be based on that topic. And then during the post-task, that we have different types of approaches for the post-task. The teacher will select the students' examples, and then he draws attention to the grammar and then explains the grammar. So TBUT proposes the students must be exposed to grammar to make it more clear for them. And this is how like the TBGT task cycle would look like. So first, the teacher presents the topic, highlighting phrases, and helping students comprehend what they are doing. Then they complete the task, and then they prepare the report for the whole class. Then they share the report. It can be speaking or writing. They can share results and all that depending on the main task. And then after that, the students are exposed to the grammar through the example, and then the teacher explains the grammar behind this example. So this is what TBGT in general terms is. And then regarding the 4 aspects on fluency, first, grammatical accuracy, that refers to a person's ability to use the language without grammatical errors. Then we have the speed of speech production, that refers to the rate at which the language is produced when speaking. Then we have the syntactic complexity, that it's basically how sophisticated the language production is regarding grammar. And Then the interaction language, which are like the little utterances that allow participants to be involved in the conversation or to show that they are involved in the conversation. And it's like reactions and all that. So those are the 4 topics that I will be covering when I refer to fluency. Okay, so in previous studies, as I said, we don't have previous studies regarding TBGT, but we have with TBLT, and these are some of the more relevant for my research to this point. I'm still reading a lot. So the first one, it was an experimental research to determine if role-playing under TBLT changed the student's speaking ability. And they found that participants in the experimental group actually presented more positive results than the control group regarding their speaking ability. We had another one comparing TBLT and PPP model, and they found that the TBLT group presented more favorable results regarding vocabulary retention in this one. And they also mentioned that it was possible to see that interaction and output production were beneficial for this positive result. Another study regarding how English learners improve their speaking fluency in a TBLT approach. And Albino concluded that TBLT helps students improve their fluency in the speed of speech production, the grammatical accuracy, and interactional language. And students expressed they felt encouraged to speak and that this approach enhanced their motivation. Now, regarding syntactic complexity, there was a study where they compared TBLT with MAP grammar, and they found that both methodologies positively impacted the students' syntactic complexity, and it increased the students' accuracy and fluency also. There was also another study regarding language skills in general, and they wanted to comprehend the students' perceptions of language teaching in that specific context and what was more efficient for them to study. And the study showed that students needed grammar instruction to effectively impact their language knowledge, and that it also presented that including explicit grammar in task-based teaching can enhance students' language skills and also adds more interaction to the class environment. And one last study that I mentioned, it was to examine the effects of TBLT and task-supported language teaching on students' speaking performance. And it showed that TBLT helps students improve their self-confidence when they're speaking the language, and the students presented a significant increase in their speaking fluency over time. And they found also like a decrease in the time of pauses, the repetition, reformulation. So those are some of the studies that have presented results on TBLT. So now, in order to achieve the goals that I'm aiming in this research, this is what I will be doing, okay? First, I'm using a class experimental design. Still, next semester, this is going to be more specific, and it will explain more. The participants that I will be working with are beginner English learners between the ages of 11 and 15 from an intensive weekend program that lasts 1 semester and it's for 4 hours a Saturday at the University of Guanajuato, and usually groups are between 16 and 22 students. The instruments that I will be using are a pre-test to assess students' performance before the instruction, a post-test to assess the students' performance after the instruction, a teacher journal to reflect on students' progress and instruction development, and I will follow an observation grade that is to be developed, and a written survey to understand the students' perceptions of the training with TBGT and their performance during the task. So understanding what they perceive from this whole study. And so first, I'm going to apply the pre-test, then the training based on TVGT, and it's going to be focused on fluency. Then I will apply the post-test and the written survey, and then data analysis with all three plus the teacher's journal. And this is what I will be doing next semester: designing the instruments, designing the training, the data collection, and writing the chapter methodology. And
1 minute, Gabby, sorry.
That is
perfect.
it. Thank you. Okay, these are the references. And I'm going to stop sharing.
Sorry, Gabby.
It's
I
fine.
shouldn't have said 1 more minute, but I thought we were going to continue. So thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank
And
you.
well, it's time for questions and comments. And yeah, we have Dr. Ramos. So go ahead, Maggie.
Yes, two questions.
Mhm.
Gabby, right?
Yes.
My first question is like a well, if you were Nehemiah, yes, what will be your focus on use, form, and function in terms of percentages, and in regards of grammar? Because when teaching,
Uh-huh.
we need to pay attention to form, use, and function, right? So
Yes.
what will be like the percentages Nehemiah will have in her mind?
Actually, I had not thought about that.
I know, but more
Yeah.
you have read it, yes? That's why I
Yes,
said
yes.
not fair, but I would like you to think about it.
Okay. Can I have a few moments to think about it? Because yeah. Can I hear the second question?
Second question. My second question is if you can give us a clear example, because you had like the cycle she proposes, right? Can you give us an example of grammar point and how that grammar point will be presented in the
TVGT.
TVGT?
For example, this one is, I think, easier. So it would be, let's say, past tense, simple past tense. So the first or the pre-task can be like a brainstorm of past events. And then the main task would be discussing like what happened, like a historical topic, this happened, people did this, like a just conversation or little research that they can do, or a project to present, like a presentation. And then the report would be the presentation. And then the post task would be, okay, the examples that the students use during their main task, and then approach the form of the past tense. That's like in a few words.
Now, think about that, and then you are telling me an answer of the balance between use, form, and function. Yes, more or less. It doesn't.
Yeah, I think Dr. Sunny wants to say something.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. May, for the question. Actually, the Nehemiah, she didn't consider the approach of Salsa Murcia. So that's something we have to adapt from Salsa Murcia to this new approach. So, but I would say that it is a balance between form, meaning, and use, because that's what we are actually trying to do, to provide an approach that it is balanced in terms of my students can use the language with accuracy, and they can actually also use the language to communicate something. So I think that's I think that's something we haven't added yet, but we will at some point, just to show this balance that we are trying to have.
Yes, because in a way, well, she continues to be like in agreement with the task-based approach in where fluency is much more important than accuracy. Yes.
Yeah.
But I also understand that you are teaching teenagers, and teenagers will be like disappointed if they focus much more on form than in meaning and use and function. Yes, and that's why I do understand. But still, adolescents, that's what they need. Yeah. So, and that's what I wanted to hear, but that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Margarita, for your question. Sorry that I didn't answer it properly.
No problem. Questions are for reflecting. Just that
Yes.
I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm not trying to do that.
No, I know. And I am taking notes of everything that I should address. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a question from Dr. Mockford. So go ahead, Jerry.
I know, actually thinking about it, I think Sonny's answered the question, because obviously task-based teaching is about achieving objectives of teaching, achieving goals, and grammar is about accuracy. So, my question would be, what is more important in evaluating the students? If they achieve the goal, but the grammar is not there, does that mean that they're not evaluated positively? Or maybe they achieve the grammar, but they don't achieve the task. And I'm in no way criticizing, because I think it is useful, because task-based teaching in one sense doesn't have much of a structure. I mean, it has goals, objectives, meaning, etc. And I like the idea of introducing the grammar, but it'd just be, if I was reading that thesis, I'd want a very detailed discussion about that balance, between achieving a goal and the use of language, and how much freedom does the student have in using grammar to achieve that that goal. And it's kind of a little bit related to what Maggie's saying about form, function, and use. Yeah, but it's nice. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, so I think we need to work on a description of how do we find this balance, and how are we, in a word, like measuring this balance after the task is completed, and like if the objective is achieved. But we need to really like think about how important it is at the end. So thank you for your, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have 1 or 2 minutes for more questions or comments. No questions. Well, I have a tiny comment. I already saw your face on it. Okay, but it's a comment, because if you're talking about in a moment, you talk about a little bit the speaking anxiety, and also it is not only the focus on the performance, but in a way also on the perception of how they learned. Maybe, just maybe, you could include this variable in your title, so that we could have just like this this perspective from the very beginning. Stupid comment, just take it or leave it, but it was just like my perception, because I thought it was important, since you presented just speaking anxiety, and then you just talk a little bit about the perceptions, self-confidence in speaking. So I think it could appear something like that in your title. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah.
Okay, thank you very much, Gabby. And I think, well, now it's Iris' turn, and it is Ruiz Avila, and her title until today, it was The Influence of a Prosody Pragmatic Approach to Teaching the Production of the Speech Act of Advice by EFL Mexican Teenage Learners. So, Iris, are you ready?
Yeah,
Yes?
I'm ready. Thanks.
Perfect. So the stage is all yours.
Thanks. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, perfectly.
Alrighty, thanks. All right, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all here. I hope you have a good time. Excuse me if I get a little bit nervous. It is, and I'll present the study that I've been working for the past semesters. The title changed a little bit. Now is the influence of a prosodic pragmatic approach to teaching the production of a speech act of advice by EFL Mexican teenage learners. And I believe we as teachers have our main goal is to help our students not only understand other people's intentions, but also be understood by others. Therefore, we need to talk about what a competent speaker of another language is. According to Himes, Swain, and Cannell, a competent speaker is a person who is able to produce grammatically correct statements, but also he's able to identify the context where he can produce these statements. Through my practice of English during these years, I've noticed that my students when they come to our classroom, they want to communicate in the target language. So that's why we need also to talk about communicative competence. Communicative competence is a term that was first developed by Himes as a juxtaposition of the linguistic approach of Chomsky. He added that also students need to be aware of the context where they can produce these grammatical structures. Later on, Cannell and Swain also added some more components to the communicative competence, and they said that the competence in the classroom has to be beyond grammatical structures. Also, the students need to acquire the ability to recognize appropriately the context where they are in. And they added discourse competence, discourse ability, strategy ability, and social linguistic ability. What is the, I told you before that my research will focus on pragmatics and prosody. What is the context of these elements in the language teaching classroom? Yates mentioned that even though there is evidence that these elements are vital in the process of learning another language, there are no still resources for teachers to help us teach these elements. Also, she mentions that there is low visibility about these components of the language, pragmatics and prosody. Therefore, the research will have this question: what is the influence of teaching the production, asking and giving of the speech out of advice and the corresponding intonation pattern to EFL Mexican teenage students? The research objectives are these: to investigate whether the deliberate integration of pragmatics and pronunciation instruction leads to improvement in the appropriateness and comprehensibility of EFL Mexican teenage learners' spoken communication in regards to asking for and giving advice and their corresponding intonation patterns. Also, it is expected to describe what happens before and after the treatment in regards to asking and giving advice and their corresponding intonation patterns. And the study is based on these justifications. Practically, the study is expected to help the Mexican learners to improve their communicative and pragmatic competence concerning effectively performing the speech out of advice and prosody. Psychologically, also the study is expected to help the learners, since they are in a stage where they receive or they require advice from their teachers. So it would be a good means of communication between the teachers and the students. Theoretically, the current studies hope to provide some useful insights into how the approach prosody and pragmatic is performed in the EFL context. Before I continue, I would like to explain a little bit about Speech Act. The speech act is a theory first developed by a philosopher, John Austin. He mentioned that there are three types of forces: locution, illocution, and perlocution forces. However, later on, there was another philosopher, Searle, who contributed to the theory, and he added 5 more categories to the speech act. I'm going to talk about just directive category. That is where advice belongs. What is directive? Well, directives are speech acts used by speakers to direct others to do action. And what is advice? According to Searle, advice is telling you what is best for you. So when we perform an advice speech, we need to be careful. Well, we need to teach our students to be careful when giving or receiving advice, since advice can be seen also as threatening. And well, there are some strategies for the realization of this speech act of advice, and Flores Martinez categorized them into 3 types of strategies. That is direct, indirect, conventionally, and non-conventional indirect strategies. And these, at the same time, are subdivided into imperative, negative imperative, declarative, and performative. For example, imperative could be study more for exams. Negative imperatives, don't worry about it. Declarative, you should. Performative, my advice is. Also, indirect conventionally is divided into 4 categories more. Conditional, for example, if I were you, I would study more. Probability, it might be better if you study more. Interrogative, why don't you study? It's a kind of question. And declarative, you could, you might. Also, non-conventionally indirect strategy are hence. These are not stated explicitly in the speech act. Example, you want to pass exam, don't you? Well, what does have to do pragmatics and prosody? More precisely, it'll be intonation. As we know, in prosody, intonation carries meaning in a sentence. If a learner is not able to produce accurately the intonation with the context they are speaking in, they can irritate or confuse the listeners. Even though they use the same words, words can have different meaning according to the intonation they give. For example, the first example, it was interesting. So that means I'm not finished. I'm going to continue giving more information. Or the pattern of intonation falling, it was interesting. So I mean that I'm certain and I finished the statement. Or the other one, it was interesting. So I mean that I'm not sure about what I'm saying, or I want to add more in the statement. And well, intonation and speech act of advice are so closely related, since, as I told you before, when giving advice, it is a sensitive topic, because learners can take offense and they will feel threatened. So, intonation, as Tench states, it is accompanied by a falling intonation because it contains a degree of authority on the part of the speaker. Example, you should try saving more money. So it is a falling intonation pattern. But also, this advice can take a rise intonation. Example, you could try sleeping earlier. So, but over here, the intonation has a rise intonation because the listener has the final decision to make or not to make the action. And here there are some studies done on the field. This study is new in the field. There are not much studies about it. And over here in Kenya, they did a research where they took 40 radio programs. They analyzed, well, first, let me tell you, Kenya is a country where most people are multilingual, and usually they do code switching. So, para the radio is, the communication of the radio is English. So when the callers call the radio, they usually communicate in English. And the study was based on 40 radio programs where they analyze how the speaker and the listener communicate and how they interact when they give advice on some taboos in the community. They found out that usually when there were serious topics talked about, they would code switch and they wouldn't use English as a main language to communicate. And this study was recorded on using the Pratt program. Well, there was another study in pragmatics where they examined the effect of the speech act of advice in a university. The objective of the study was that they evaluate the college students to perform, how they perform the act of advice. And if the learners recognize the act of advice and if they could produce and what strategies they use in this production. And the results, well, they demonstrated that the students have an ability to recognize and produce a speech out of advice. However, some items were left unanswered when they made a test, the post-test. And also the student had a lack of awareness of the importance of using a variety of strategies for giving advice in English. Additionally, they face a significant difficulty with producing certain strategies such as hence, interrogatives, probabilities, declaratives, and conditional strategies. Over here in pragmatics and prosody, there was this study, but it was based on Irvi dialect. The name was the pragmatic function of intonation in Irvi dialect, acoustic analysis of some speech acts. The study's objective was to examine the intonational variation in utterances with directive and comessive elocutionary forces, focusing on orders, requests, warnings, threats, and promises. Well, the results that they found out that intonation can transform the interpretation of an utterance to reflect the speaker's intended meaning. Additionally, intonation helps determine the elocutionary force of directive and commissives. And well, over here on the field of pragmatics, it was not action research, it was just more theory. They selected plays to see how the written speech out of advice were used in the plays. Also here in the literature review, also it was a study how speech acts in the EFL context. And finally, this is the study that is closest to my study. It is a study that it was done in high school students where teachers identify a problem of giving and receiving advice because the students were so straightforward when asking or giving advice. So the study objective was aimed to investigate the effects of teaching English pragmatic features on Iranian high school students' performance on indirect speech acts of request. There were 50 participants, but they were divided into two groups, the control group and the experimental group. And the process of the experiment was they had a pre-test and a post-test, and of course the treatment part. They saw the results demonstrated that the control group continued taking their...
It is 2 minutes, 2 more minutes, sorry.
Well, thank you. The results concluded that in the experimental group, they had a really high level of pragmatics proficiency after the experiment. And well, let me tell you faster about the methodology. It is going to be a research action. That means that this is the cycle of the research action, identify the problem, that I already did that. And I am in the stage of develop a plan of action to later collect the data. And well, the participants and the context. I am in Jalisco and I'm working in a program from CEP, in English Recrea. English Recrea is a social program that offers free English courses of English to students who come from a deficient economy, and they usually study in public schools. They are teenagers from 12 up to 17 years old, and their mother tongue is Spanish. Therefore, they don't take other, because of this inconvenience of economy, they don't take other English classes, just their regular classes are in their regular schools and the classes on Saturdays. And well, the instruments that I'm going to use, first it is going to be a pretest, and the artificial intelligence will be used. It'll be a conversation between the students and the artificial intelligence. It'll be a treatment, that is the methodology part, where I will teach the pragmatics and intonation part. Of course, there will be a post-test, and it'll be again with the artificial intelligence and the student. A reflective journal where I will write my observations during the experiment. Self-evaluation for the students to see how they feel about the experiment, and the ethics statement. And well, the procedure goes as I told you before with the cycle action research. What I want to analyze, well, what I expect, to analyze, analyze the production of EFL learners when giving advice, particularly in the context of adjacency fairs where advice is solicited and provided regards to their intonation patterns. What am I going to do next semester? This. Design the instruments, design the training part, correct the literature, methodology, and apply the instruments in the training teaching part. Thank you very much. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Iris. And now it's time for questions. So, questions or comments for Iris? Dr. Maggie, or did I see something just like
Yes. Well, Iris, congratulations. I know that we do have to work on the objectives a little bit more because they were phrased like in a very long way. But you are on the right track. You are working really hard on the topic, and I have seen it towards the previous research that has been done regarding the topic. I know that you are very interested into this. It is a social contribution, yes? So you are contributing to society, which is going to be like very valuable and very valued by this audience. Because you need to rephrase the objectives, the title might change a little bit as well, but asking for and giving advice, you are like already focused on the topic, let's say. My question here is whether, and it is to help you reduce a little bit more, whether you're going to concentrate on the kind of direct, indirect, or non-conventionally indirect strategies to work with asking for and giving advice. Which one do you think you can concentrate on?
I would like to concentrate on direct because I think that is the closest grammar structure the students have. They are more acquainted with.
Okay, and why not the other two?
Well, if I'm going to do the other two, maybe I have to prepare them grammatically speaking first, because they haven't received this kind of grammatical structure yet.
And
For
if you
example,
if you are going to focus more on the direct ones, what are the pros and cons or focusing more on the direct ones?
that maybe it'll be a reduced study because there will be just few structures that I just few structures, so will be maybe less production.
What in terms of pragmatics and something that is Dr. Macford here?
No, unfortunately, he had to leave because he has his Pro Innova course.
Okay. I will say something like really cultural. I'm going straight to the point. Yes. I can see the non-conventional indirect ones. I don't know, probably in the tendency of more polite. And I see the direct ones in the tendency of not that polite.
Okay.
Not that polite. But we can discuss it. Yes,
Right.
we can discuss it, Sonny, you and I. And if it is like the grammar structure that conveys much more because of they can learn it faster, yes, but then you can do something about the rudeness, but we can discuss it. Okay?
Yeah, thank you. In fact, I would like to do it. If I have time, I would like to do this because there will be more information for me and for them, of course. But I don't know if I'm going to have the time.
And these are questions that occur to me like after we have discussed. That's why presentations are for. Yes?
Yeah, it's all right. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, Maggie. And any more questions or comments for Iris? Iris, it is.
Well,
yeah, Sonny, go ahead.
well, I just
Dr.
want
Castro, sorry.
I just want to say that congratulations, Iris. I think it is a very innovative work, and that's something we have to emphasize because we have taught speech acts before, but we focus only on the writing aspect of the speech act, and now you are focusing on speaking. So I think you have two variables that are very interesting and kind of difficult to address. But Dr. Maggie and I, we know you can do it. Okay, so you have to keep working hard as you have been doing it this semester. So that's it. Congratulations. You have a very interesting thesis that, we are excited. Yes, Dr. Maggie.
And one more thing that I noticed today, and I didn't notice before, is that the intonation patterns are giving you also a tendency towards the same thing, more polite, less polite. But falling intonation seems more polite and raising intonation seems like more like, oh, I am ordering you to do this. Yes. So pay attention to these details, what will happen, and if they acquire like what you are teaching them in the correct way. So just make emphasis on that.
And you have to teach your students to observe that, right?
Yeah.
To make them
yeah, I forgot to
observers.
say that. Yeah, part of the treatment will be that I have to make students aware of the intonation patterns.
Yeah. And the pragmatic structure of the speech.
Exactly, and the pragmatic structures.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm not an expert on the field. However, I love this interface you're working on. I mean, prosody per se, I'm sorry to say this because Dr. Maggie is here, but prosody per se is, I mean, yeah, thank you, Maggie, but there's no use on working on prosody just like that. But prosody with pragmatics, it's just like a very important objective in the teaching learning process, because you're working on those pragmatic patterns, on those structures, and you're not working on syntactic structures. Shame on me, because I'm in love with syntax. However, you're working with that, the importance of intonation in order to provide the appropriate communicative goal through intonation, and of course with the pragmatic structures, etc., the speech acts. However, I just love this interface you're working on, and I think it's going to be a very interesting thesis. I'm not sure, Sonia and Maggie, I'm not sure, but I just remember I read a thesis from the Master on Applied Linguistics, and they were working a little bit on this interface, which was just like, I don't know if it was injunctive speech acts of don't do this, do that, the recommendations, and you should do this, or you want this, right? This stuff you were working on. And it was in Spanish, of course, but I don't remember. So I'm going to ask Dr. Veronica Gonzalez if there's a recent thesis about that, because I remember I already read something about this in Spanish. So it would be very interesting if you could just like have this previous study with you. Any more questions or comments for Iris? No. So I think it's time for a break. And Sonny, could we just stop the... I trust you more than myself, so that's why I do ask you this. So we could wait just a few seconds so that all of us are here. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you what you did during the break, okay? That's between you and yourselves, don't worry. So, ceci étant dit, I think it's time for Marisol Acosta-Ham to present her thesis. And the title until today it was Implementing Gamification in the EFL Classroom to Boost Grammar Learning in High School Students. The thesis director is Dr. Hugo Trejo Gonzalez. And well, Marisol, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen with you. Can you please tell me if you see my presentation?
Perfectly.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sara, and hello, everyone. Good morning, professors and classmates. As you already heard, the name of my research is Implementing Gamification in the EFL Classroom to Boost Grammar Learning in High School Students. My thesis director, as Sara already mentioned, is Dr. Hugo Trejo Gonzalez. Oops, there. Okay, as everybody knows, grammar is a crucial aspect of every language, and particularly in the EFL field, it is known to be an area or subject where students struggle. They often face difficulties, and this situation sometimes might be aggravated by the misconception that some students have that grammar can be boring and even problematic. Throughout the years, there has been a discussion about what is the most appropriate method and technique to teach grammar. And in regards to traditional methods and techniques, there are some that focus mainly on repetition, memorization, and the use of drills, but these methods only transfer rules. And also, learners' perceptions about grammar is that it is unnecessary for communication, and they often show a lack of interest in it. Therefore, I believe there is a necessity to implement approaches and methods that can fit our learners' needs and help them become more active learners. Gamification is an innovative approach and it can be found across various fields. It is a part of our everyday lives in marketing and customer engagement programs. And gamification in learning has gained popularity in the last decade. And it has been proven through several studies that a gamified classroom can improve students' motivation in an academic achievement. Therefore, the purpose of this study is to analyze the effectiveness of game elements such as dynamics, mechanics, and components of gamification in the classroom for grammar learning of the English language in Mexican high school students. The justification of this study is that it will hopefully provide some insights into the EFL field and could possibly influence the practices of the English language department at Preparatoria Ciudad Universitaria. Language teachers outside of my school community might also benefit from the result of this research. Instruction for first and second grade learners could have an improvement as well. It may also contribute to the work of the English language department at Universidad Autónoma de Sinaloa and its 42 high schools across the Sinaloa state. Ultimately, it will result in a positive impact on students' performance and acquisition of English as a foreign language, and of course, their overall academic development. The research question in this study is, what is the effect that game elements in the classroom have on English grammar learning of Mexican high school students at Preparatoria Ciudad Universitaria, Los Mochis? It is believed that by incorporating gamification in the learning environment of Mexican high school students, the grammar acquisition process of the English language will be enhanced with more effective results in the grammar acquisition process. For the theoretical framework, there are some main notions and concepts that have guided this research. The first one that I would like to mention is ludic pedagogy. This was introduced by Lorisela and Edmonds, and this is a teaching philosophy that is centered around playfulness, positivity, incorporates elements of play into the teaching and learning processes. We, of course, have the term of gamification, and there is a very popular definition that it was proposed by the Turing et al., and they said that gamification is the use of game design elements in non-game contexts. CAP also states that gamification is implemented in a variety of settings, from business companies, educational institutions, government agencies, and with different purposes. For example, learning, creating new ideas, solving problems. Research has shown that the benefits of using gamification can increase engagement and motivation, can also encourage collaboration and social interactions. It also allows to personalize learning environments, and it offers constant feedback. We can also see that there is this framework that is proposed by Werbach and Hunter. They call this the game element hierarchy. They have categorized game elements into these 3 different areas, which are dynamics, mechanics, and components. We also have the content-based instruction, which is an approach to teach grammar that will actually be implemented in this study alongside with gamification. And this approach refers to language that is being learned through the study of other subjects or other themes, and it's not exclusively focused on language content. It is important for me to state that this approach is chosen since it was required by the context, and it will be combined with gamification. In regards to the state of the art, there are several research articles that have helped this study, and some have demonstrated the feasibility and effectiveness of incorporating gamification into real EFL and ESL classrooms in a diversity of contexts and in different educational levels. The ones that I have displayed right here for you are of great relevance to this research and show different interesting results. For example, this first research demonstrated that gamified learning is effective in terms of grammar achievement using online language games. For example, Socrative, PowerPoint Game Challenge, and Kahoot. The next study indicated that gamified elements can enhance students' engagement, improves grammar comprehension, and also increases motivation. This last research article provide an understanding of implementing gamification to teach grammar, but in a higher education level. And they propose to do it in 10 different phases. And they also suggest that there are 5 possible students' reactions to the gamified learning environment. For the methodology, this study is an applied research with a qualitative method that aims to analyze the effects that game elements have on grammar learning for high school students of Preparatoria Ciudad Universitaria Los Mochis. And the context is that this is a public high school with approximately 2,500 students. In second grade, classes are formed with 50 students in the age range from 15 to 17. English is taught as a mandatory subject 3 times a week in 50-minute classes. And their English level of proficiency in English, or their level of proficiency in English, varies from A2 to B1. And for this research, a grammar course based on gamification will be taught to second grade learners. This grammar course will be adapted from the school's current curriculum and is to be taught in the subject of English 3. For the data collection, 2 instruments will be implemented: interview and observation. An interview with open-ended questions is to be implemented to inquire about participants' perceptions and to assess their acquired grammar knowledge. Also, to monitor and analyze students' attitudes and performance, participant observation will be implemented by the course instructor. And throughout the course, a teacher will be collecting data through observation with a rubric, and interviews will take place right after the term finishes. Some of the main sources that have been consulted for this research are some gamification books in which you can find definitions, descriptions of game-related terms, gamification key elements. There are these very popular books of gamification from Werbach and Hunter for the Win and the Gamification Toolkit. We have some research articles as well. This first conference paper from the Terding, Dixon, Calette, and Knack, this is where this very popular definition of gamification came from. We also have another article where you can find a comparative analysis of gamification and game-based learning. They offer some interesting insights into the differences of these 2 environments. And we also have another article that shed light on the negative effects of gamification in education. That will be all for my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Marisol. Very well done. Before proceeding with the comments and questions, I have to say that your thesis director himself has a very interesting article, scientific articles on gamification. Those are written in Spanish, or I think so, Hugo, yes. So yeah, you could consider them as well because they are very well written and they also shed some light on this interesting topic and the advantages and the disadvantages, but you know already that. Okay, this was just like a publicity for my friend and colleague. Okay, and yes, Dr. Ramos, you have some comments or questions. Go ahead, Maggie.
Yes, thank you. Marisol, I would like to see your research question once more. If possible, please.
Of course. Let me share it with you again. There it is.
Okay, what is the effect of game elements, dynamics, mechanics, and components? So you are going to focus on the dynamics, the mechanics, and the components of gamification. So 3 elements of gamification. And then you're also going to focus on the grammar learning. In that way, my concern is which grammar elements, or if you are going to focus in the whole curriculum regarding the grammar, or which grammar points from the whole curriculum that you have. That because you need to consider the time that you start applying the piece of research itself to the time that you need to finish. Yes. So what do you think about that? Which
Yes. I had in mind that the content that will be applied is the content specified on the school's curriculum for the subject of English 3 or English 4 in that case if the timing changes.
In that case, I don't know, but you need to talk to your thesis director and you need to select the grammar points because of time. Yes, I will say that applying gamification to the whole curriculum will be like time consuming. Yes, on the one hand. And then another concern that I have is that you're going to be paying attention to the 3 elements of gamification. And I don't know if you would like to reduce that too, but it is also a matter of talking to your thesis director.
Oh, I see. Thank you for that observation. I was actually thinking of I haven't really discussed it thoroughly with Dr. Hugo. We have commented, but since I haven't adapted the course yet, but I was thinking of focusing a little bit more in components.
Okay. And finally, you said that one of your instruments is interviews with your students, but through interviews, how you are going to evaluate how much gamification intervene with their learning of the grammar points. Yes. So just pay attention to these details. And I know that we are just like on time because you are just starting to think about the methodology, but it is the perfect time also for you to pay attention to these details. Yes.
Oh, yes, that's another great observation. Actually, Dr. Hugo was telling me something related to that, and we were actually thinking that was going to be clarified once I have the instruments once I have created the instruments.
And my last comment is, well, congratulations. It seems like a very interesting and motivating topic for you and your students, and also for your thesis director, right? Please do take more advantage of your thesis director, just as Dr. Sara mentioned. He's an expert on that, and then you can take advantage of that. My last comment is also congratulations on taking into consideration content-based teaching, which I believe it is very appropriate for very young learners and young learners. I think it is very relevant for them because, once more, they don't need to focus a lot on grammar. They do need to know how it works, but they do need to focus more on functions and meaning and things like that. Yes. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, Doctora Margarita. And yes, of course, Dr. Hugo is great.
We all know that. Okay. Yeah. I think Dr. Trejo wanted to make some comments. I think you could call it gamification or something like that for your proposal, right? I mean, instead of gamification, it was a stupid comment. Hugo, go ahead. I think you had a comment.
Gracias, Sara. Antes que nada, Marisol, muchas felicidades. La verdad estoy muy contento con los avances que has realizado, con el tiempo que tenemos aquí, pues no alcanzamos a percibir todo lo que has trabajado, pero estoy, la verdad, muy contento. Maggie, muchas gracias por los comentarios, doctora Maggie. Y solo quería hacer un comentario relacionado precisamente con lo que dice la doctora Maggie, que estamos todos de acuerdo. Es en relación a los puntos gramaticales precisos para delimitar esta parte. Yo creo que, bueno, estamos a buen tiempo y una vez que el contexto público y contenido se ha delimitado, va a ayudar a delimitar todo lo que viene después. Es decir, la propuesta, que uno de mis temores principales que comentamos un poco en las reuniones es cómo vas a asegurar que lo que eliges de gamificación o lo que se integra va a afectar directamente a la variable gramática y no a las variables cooperación, interés, motivación, que las va a afectar. Pero ahí queda muy claro, creo que es un reto muy grande. Sinceramente, al momento yo no he visto algún estudio que se enfoque en eso a nivel de contenido o competencias a desarrollar. Con esto no quiero decir que no sea posible. De hecho, estoy muy emocionado porque estoy seguro que vas a demostrar que sí se puede. Eso por un lado. Entonces, a nivel, el mismo contexto en cuanto a los contenidos gramaticales, a qué tanto vas a considerar, creo que te va a obligar de cierta manera, porque tienes que evaluar ciertos contenidos con las pruebas o los exámenes intermedios y finales, lo cual esto nos va a ayudar a detectar qué elementos deberías de trabajar en todos estos componentes dinámicas y mecánicas que se relacionen directamente. Dicho esto, a ver si queda un poquito más claro lo que quiero compartir. No, ya no puedo compartir. No, sí puedo. Quiero nada más proyectar un Word así de borrador que tenía ahorita. No sé si ahí se ve un poquito.
Sí.
Sí. Perfecto. Gracias. Aquí tengo algunos de los elementos que se clasifican en dinámicas, mecánicas, componentes de gamificación. Y mi temor era precisamente esto, lo que marqué en color, ahí como naranja, es donde yo, con todos mis límites, alcanzo a percibir que ciertos contenidos podrían trabajarse, ciertos contenidos relacionados con gramática, ¿no? Sin embargo, todo lo que está en blanco, mis limitaciones no me dejan ver cómo se podría trabajar la parte de gramática o de algún contenido, no tiene que ser gramática, en tu caso es gramática, con emoción, lo de las dinámicas, por ejemplo, tenemos emociones, progresión, relaciones, restricciones, pues ahí corresponde más a competencias socioemocionales, quizá. En mecánicas, pues a lo mejor la recompensa la podríamos agregar con lo que comentamos un poquito, ahí, pero bueno, la suerte, las transacciones, turnos, avatar, colecciones, desbloqueos, ahí yo veo un poco que es más difícil. Digo, quizá, Marisol, en tu caso tú dices, no, yo sí veo que en todos lados se puede, pero ahí es lo que yo alcanzo a percibir y yo creo que mi sugerencia sería que te centraras en los elementos en donde sí se puede trabajar algún contenido de manera precisa, en tu caso, que la gramática, y digo, para crear materiales o diferentes actividades en clase que tengan que ver con esto, donde se trabaje el contenido en tu estudio, esto independientemente de que agregues todo lo demás o algunas otras cuestiones como colecciones, desbloqueo de contenidos o que se creen equipos, ¿no? Yo veo que en la cooperación y colaboración se puede trabajar algunos elementos, pero a lo mejor en gráficas sociales, pues no veo cómo se va a relacionar con la gramática, se relaciona más a lo mejor con la motivación, ¿no? Y bueno, ya, ahí le paro porque si no, vamos a terminar hasta mañana. Entonces yo creo que una vez que tengas el contenido que quieres trabajar, puedes comenzar con los elementos que vas a integrar de gamificación y esto va a ser un poco más preciso para que nos ayude a determinar la relación en las dos variables, ¿no? Y ya.
Thank you very much, Hugo. Any more questions or comments for Marisol? No more questions. So thank you very much, Marisol. I enjoyed very much your presentation. It was very clear, and I think that you have worked a lot. And well, I think now it's time for, let me check. Oh, of course, Miguel Angel Ramos Arias, and he's going to present teachers' perception and attitudes on the implementation of the information and communication technologies in English as a foreign language instruction. His thesis director is Dr. Dixie Santana. So Mike, the stage is all yours. Y no le tuve que decir, o sea, ya estaba ya puesto. You saw that, right? Go ahead, Mike. We don't hear
Can you hear me there?
Yeah, now, yes, now, yes. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Dr. Sara. So as I mentioned, you mentioned, my topic is teachers' perception and attitudes on the implementation of information and communication technologies in English as a foreign language instruction. So what I want to do for starting, I'm going to introduce this research work, and I'm going to comment some aspects here. So the first thing that I want to mention is that information and communication technology is one of our integral daily tools, and we use it for obtaining, storing, processing, creating, and sharing and presenting information. It provides a global connectivity through video conferences, and it has taken a very important role in education since pandemic by COVID-19. Here, this provoked teachers' adaptation. So teachers had to turn into the electronic environment using these tools. And also the teachers at Universidad Autónoma de Coahuila, who are my population, that I'm going to talk about this later, have also integrated these tools in their teaching practices. So I'm going to justify my research at this point. So what is planned to discover is or to understand is the attitudes and perceptions that the teachers at the Universidad Autónoma de Coahuila have at the moment to implement these ICT tools in their teaching practices. So the objective of my research is to understand, as I mentioned before, the teachers' perceptions and attitudes at Universidad Autónoma de Coahuila about the use of information and communication technology tools in teaching English as a second language. My research question is, what are the teachers' perceptions and attitudes at Universidad Autónoma de Coahuila about the use of information and communication technology tools in teaching English as a second language? So here I have a summary of the studies I have read previously. There are some interesting articles by different authors, so I'm going to summarize some of them. I want to mention here that I have a vast collection of articles. I have around 40, so I decided to include only the most relevant ones. So in this point, integrating ICT in ELT produces enhancing teaching and learning. So as the slide says, information and communication technology has revolutionized education by providing tools and resources that enhance teaching and language processes. This is a quote that I took from an article by Leva and Temaja from 2023. So the main objective of this slide is to highlight how ICT tools has fundamentally changed the landscape of education, particularly in ELT, by providing innovative tools and opportunities that enhance both teaching and learning experiences. So ICT and student autonomy in learning. As I mentioned before, ICT empowers students by providing tools and resources that enable them to take control of their learning process and access a wealth of information beyond traditional sources. In this case, technology provides, or let's say, makes students be responsible of their own learning. They are going to have access to interactive learning resources, which they found more interesting than traditional teaching. They are going to be exposed to and have access to authentic materials, and they are going to have a very good collaborative opportunities. They are going to be able to share information through different media, even though they are not in the same classroom. So as I mentioned before, ICT revolutionized ELT teaching. So it has brought about significant changes in ELT by transforming traditional teaching methods into more student-centered and technology-integrated approaches. So I mentioned before, self-directed learning. Students, we as teachers can be a guide. We are going to avoid the traditional teacher role. So we're going to become guides, facilitators, instructors, and so many other roles. They are going to be exposed to a personalized learning path. We as teachers, we are going to take into account their needs. So we are going to be able to create, design, or find different tools that are appropriate for their learning. Access to a vast of information. As we know, the web is plenty of different materials, so we can choose the best ones or the ones that suit our necessities and our students' necessities. And we are going to provoke the students' critical thinking and problem solving. So ICT's positive impact on language learning outcomes. So some of the research articles I found highlight the beneficial impact of ICT on language learning by enhancing engagement, interaction, and access to multimedia resources. As I have mentioned before, all this information convey and enhance engagement, improve language proficiency, access to all those diverse materials, and the facilitation of collaborative learning. So there are some barriers in integrating ELT, and this part is on the teacher's field. So despite the potential benefits of ICT in enhancing language learning, teachers often, or almost always, I'm going to say in my context, face significant challenges in effectively integrating technology into their practices. So one of them is the lack of technical skills. Here at Universidad Autónoma de Coahuila, some of the schools or faculties don't have the facilities to get the students or the teachers connected into the internet, so that there is no internet access. The inadequate training. Some of the teachers don't know how to implement these tools in their teaching practices, so they have to be exposed to very specific training. Some others are reluctant to change. They want to keep the traditional methods, the book, the marker, the whiteboard, and maybe they need to change the chip, or to change the way they think to implement these tools. And the access to the resources. As I mentioned before, if there is not internet access, it is going to be harder to have access to the materials in the classrooms. So enhancing teachers ICT competences through professional development. In this case, the effective integration of ICT in ELT requires educators to possess adequate technical skills and pedagogical knowledge to maximize the benefits of technology enhanced learning. Again, the importance of professional development, the preparedness that the professor or the instructor has, technical skills enhancement. They have to be prepared. They have to know how to do this, how to integrate the technology into their teaching practices. The pedagogical integration, as I mentioned before, and the continuous learning. The teacher has to be open to face continuous training in order to become more proficient in the use of technology. So in this point, some of the authors I used to prepare the presentation debate over ICT's integration in ELT benefits and drawbacks, or disadvantages. So the integration of ICT in ELT involves ongoing debate regarding the effectiveness of different strategies and the potential impacts, both positive and negative, on the language learning outcomes. So again, the effective integration strategies, how they are going to integrate technology into different topics. It could be grammar, vocabulary, some of the skills, reading, writing, speaking, or listening. The benefits of this technology in language learning, how the students are going to be exposed, how are they going to be benefit. As I mentioned before, the enhanced engagement, again, the access to authentic materials, collaboration, and sorry, because I'm using two monitors, and communication. So these are some of the disadvantages and challenges that teachers may face during the implementation of these technologies. So technical challenges, for example, I have some notes here too. Here. The benefits, as I mentioned, the technical challenges, some issues, such inadequate infrastructure, as I mentioned before, the internet access or the facilities provided by the faculties, unreliable internet connectivity, and limited access to ICT resources. In the case of, in the case of pedagogical concerns, maybe an over-reliance on technology may overshadow essential language and learning principles. The digital divide, in this case, the socioeconomic disparities. There are students and teachers that don't have the opportunity to have some gadgets, for example, a laptop or a computer. There are some students that have mentioned that they don't have enough money in their cell phones to maybe access an electronic exam. So these are the digital division. And training needs. I think if a teacher is well trained, he or she is going to be able to implement all these tools in a correct way. So here I want to mention that I had access to different sites on the internet to get my resources. I found some good ones in a site called ResearchGate, in which some of the thesis directors here at the Universidad de Guadalajara have some publications. I found some of them there. The Journal of Education Technology. There's also some good authors and some good articles related to my topic, so I decided to have some of them. International Journal of Education and Development, using information and communication technology. It has also very relevant articles to implement in my research. The Institute of Advanced Science Extension has published the International Journal of Advanced and Applied Sciences. Also, some of my references came from this site. And the International Journal of Research and Analytical Reviews has also some pertinent articles to be implemented. The Journal of English Language and Literature. In this site, all the articles, or most of them, are from Indian and Saudi authors. That is something that it caught my attention, because most of my my resources are from those parts of the world. So I'm going to talk about the methodology. So I have decided to implement a mixed method approach, which is quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative because I'm going to use well, before talking about this, I'm going to implement a survey design instrument, because it is—
One more minute, Mike, sorry.
Yes, I'm almost finishing. So this survey design is very popular in educational research and provides a lot of effectiveness. Quantitative because I'm going to analyze numbers. I'm going to discover how many teachers implement technology and how many others don't. And qualitative because my instrument is going to have some open-end questions in which I'm going to find out what are the perceptions and the attitudes they have among the use of technology in their classes. So here is like my outline of my research. It is Noonan system. It is divided in 8 different stages. So I have already covered the three at the beginning: objective, target population, and literature review. And this is something about my context. This research is going to be implemented at the Universidad Autónoma de Coahuila, which has presence all along the state. It is divided in 3 academic regions: Unidad Norte, Unidad Torreón, and Unidad Saltillo. It has 87 academic units. It means faculties, institutes, and schools. 6 distance education locations. This means we offer careers online. 45 schools and faculties, 14 high schools, 6 institutes, 12 research centers, 3 university hospitals, 1 academy, 3,182 professors, and my sample is going to be the 130 undergraduate English teachers. I'm going to spread my tool using Microsoft Forms and the institutional email account that all these teachers have. How I'm going to analyze my data and how I'm going to do the report. So I'm going to decode the information. I'm going to make some tabulations. I'm going to prepare an Excel document in which I'm going to analyze this information through graphs and through all the analysis, the analysis in Excel, and then I'm going to prepare a presentation for the results. So finally, these are the references that I use for this presentation. And thank you very much for hearing and for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mike. I'm going to stop sharing your screen so that I can see who has questions and comments for you. So it's time for comments, guys. Not everyone at the same time. You know, well, as a cultural parenthesis, I have to say that it was my bad, but Maestro Jonathan had a comment for Marisol, and I didn't see that he raised his hand. So I think, Marisol, he's going to send you an email or something, because I didn't see his hand. So, well, but he had a very, I think, well, he has a very interesting comment for you, okay? And comments for Mike, well, I have one tiny comment for you, Mike, about the literature review. You said that most of your authors were Indian, and yeah, sometimes just I want I want you just to pay attention on the journals, because some of the journals who have many Indian or Pakistani authors, sometimes they are predatory journals. So just be careful that what do I mean by predatory? That the authors pay a certain amount, and you get published. So there's no review, or there's no peer review as such. And then, well, the quality of this article sometimes is just not very good. So just pay attention on that. It's not that all of them are bad, but just pay attention that all these journals are indexed or are authorized by important indices of quality. Okay. That was my only comment, because the topic, I find it very interesting, but as you know, as a linguist, this is not my field. So I think Dr. Dixie has some comments for you. Yeah, go ahead, Dixie.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to say something first? No, right. Okay. Well, Mike, I've been working with you already this semester, so you're going to say, why didn't you tell me this before? But the thing is that you had never actually presented all of this to me before, so I hadn't seen it. Okay, so 2 things. Well, 3 things actually. Number 1 is what Doctora Sara says is absolutely true, and I think that this goes not only for you, but for everybody. Be careful where you find your sources. ResearchGate is great, but anybody can publish on ResearchGate. And it doesn't have to be peer reviewed. So you want to be careful about that. So just make sure that you stick with strong databases. But we'll talk about that in the session that we have on Friday, because we'll be talking about research in general. So whoever's going to be with me on Friday, be sure to remind me that we need to talk about that, looking for good resources. Okay. And so I'll give you some tips. So that's the first comment. The second comment is listening to you talk about about language learning technologies, well, technologies in general and everything that they can do. It sounds like a wonderful new world, right? Like you've solved all the problems that teachers and students have. And that's not actually true. Technologies are so I think that you want to talk about all the things that they can do, but then make sure that you mention that you look at it critically also, right? What can't they do? So what you need to do is balance your literature. There's I don't know how to say this, but let's say a way of thinking that it looks at technology within this sphere that includes the pedagogy also, right? Okay, so the tools are just tools. What's important is how you apply them. All right. So the tools are not going to teach students to be more independent. The tools are not going to be, they allow it. They might enhance it. But just by having one of these tools doesn't mean that life is going to be perfect and that students will do everything that they have. Okay, so this is something that I want you to avoid. Avoid the hyperbole, okay? Avoid exaggerating everything that they do. Look at it critically and think also, okay, in order to do this, what needs to happen, all right? Students already need to be autonomous to be able to use them, all right? Students already need to be critical to be able to use them. Because if they don't have those skills, then the tools automatically aren't going to give them to them. Okay, so this is something that you need to think about as you're doing your work. Okay, and the second thing has to do with when I listen to you and you're talking about teachers and everything like that, and you say sometimes they're reluctant to take on technology, and there are lots of reasons for it, lots and lots. And sometimes I get the impression that you think it's just because they don't want to or because they like to be professional. And it's not only that, it's a whole lot of other things that, so I think that you want to, I mean, it's great that you want to do a mixed study because the survey, it will give you only part of the information, but you really need to sit down and talk to people. What are you afraid of? What are you worried about? What's going to happen if you start implementing it? And they worry a whole lot of, right? Like, how easy is it for kids to cheat? What happens with the kids who don't have the resources? We already have a divide between the ones who have and the ones who don't have, the ones who have resources and the ones who don't have resources. So what's going to happen if we add technology, right? Okay, so, you know, not having internet in your home is a very legitimate concern. All right. So I think that there will be a point where you need to sit down with the teachers and what do you feel? What are you afraid of? What's going on? All right. And I think that will complement your study very well.
Okay.
I don't know if you have questions about that.
It would be something like an interview with them or a meeting in order to know how they're feeling about the conditions they are working on.
You're going to I think that right now what you should do is leave it open. What we had talked about was in your survey, leaving room at the end for some open question. So in these open questions, you can include that. But if you see that anybody has really, really interesting concerns or really, really interesting comments, think about getting back to that person and saying, can we talk a little bit more, and maybe doing the interviews. All right. So right now, I'm not telling you you have to do interviews, but I'm thinking you need to listen to what the people say. What are their concerns, right?
Okay.
Okay. For example, you told me that you are very, for example, you're working with 2 monitors. I mean, you have me working with 2 monitors. It's gonna, Okay. So, so this means that you're technologically savvy and you feel comfortable with it, but this isn't always the case, right? So what are those concerns that they have? All right.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Okay, pleasure.
Thank you very much, Dixie. I love when the thesis director just has so many comments for the no, I love it because it's true. No, it's not the same when you have the face-to-face sessions than when you just listen to your guy and you say, well, this is the presentation, and now I just realize so many things that I didn't know. I just love that. That's why these presentations are for, and I just love it. Thank you very much. I'm going to check if there's no one raising her hand because that's already happened to me. I'm sorry, John. I really didn't, as I just saw in general, and I didn't see any hands. So any more questions or comments for Mike? No? Let me check. No. Okay, perfect. So ceci étant dit, having said that, I think it's now Jimena's turn. Jimena Guadalupe Mendez Franco, and her thesis title is The Implementation of Focusing on Form After an Error Analysis of the Present Simple Form in High School Cebetis 176 in Cuautla, Morelos. And her thesis director is Dr. Veronica Pimienta. The only problem with Vero is that she told me that she was going to be here at 12 o'clock. And because in Mele we are so punctual, she's not going to be here for you, Jimena, but I think that we can listen to you perfectly. And if she has some comments for you, well, she will make let you know about them afterwards. So, but you can present for us, okay?
Okay, Doctora, thank you. So, hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Jimena Guadalupe Mendez Franco. My research project is about the implementation of focusing on form after an error analysis of the present simple form in high school Cebetis 176 in Cuautla, Morelos. My thesis director, as Dr. Sara mentioned, is Veronica Pimienta Rosales. As a general introduction, a classroom observation was conducted within a high school class of 44 students at Cebetis 176. Two observation sessions were conducted with a duration of 2 hours, each and one observation session with a duration of 1 hour. In each observation, there were field notes made by the researcher, in this case me, and in the last session, which lasted 2 hours, an activity was carried out. The intention of the activity was to make an error analysis. So here is important to say that I'm not the teacher who is in charge of the group that where I did observation. So the teacher who is the principal teacher of the class, he just lent me the group in order to do my pedagogical intervention. So in the error analysis in the analysis of the collected data, it was found that the main source of the errors were interlingual errors in the written structure of the simple present form. Why I choose present simple form? Because in the observation, when I did the observation, the teacher was doing an activity in simple present, so that's the reason why I'm focused on simple present. To remediate or modify these errors, a pedagogical intervention that is focused on form is proposed, and this intervention is planned to be performed in 4 weeks. So first of all, to start introducing my topic, I would like to talk about the conceptualization of error by Corder. We have two hypotheses, that is the contrastive analysis, where an error is something that must be eradicated. But on the other hand, in the error analysis, that I'm the one that I'm going to use, the errors are important evidence of the student's learning system. Another important fact of the error analysis is that the goal is to identify errors with a pedagogical purpose to seek remediation. Here, the error in this project thesis, the error is not, for us, is not a product of imperfect learning. On the other hand, it's an indicator of the learner's attempt to figure out a system. As part of the error analysis, try to figure out the sources and causes of the error. So as you can see in this chart, I share with you the types of, or the sources of errors. They are interlingual and intralingual errors. So what is an interlingual error? An interlingual error is influence of the mother tongue. That means in this case, the Spanish, that is the native language of my students, or of the students, they are influenced by their native language to the target language, that is Spanish. So we have source of errors in the interlingual errors, and they can be transfer error, mother tongue interference, and literal translation. As examples of the interlingual errors are the following. The following one, the car rep, he has 32 years old. In the first example, the adjective, the order of the adjectives is incorrect because we said in Spanish el carro rojo. And so maybe the students, they commit this literal translation and they don't follow the rule or the order of the adjective. And he has 32 years old. They are using maybe the verb has, but we know that in English, the correct word to say the age is the verb to be. Then we have the interlingual error. What is an interlingual error? Are those due to the language development. That means that the errors are committed because of the target language itself. So we have a classification that the number one is the overgeneralization, number two, ignorance of rule restrictions, number three, incomplete application of the rules, and number four, the false concept hypothesis. An example, students can do an overgeneralization in a sentence in past. I write that letter. They are adding the ed to all of the verbs in their past tense. And then we have another, she don't play soccer. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to disconnect my Alexa. Sorry.
For licuadora or no?
No, it's because my Alexa started to
okay.
Yeah. Sorry for that.
No problem at all.
Yeah. So then, as I mentioned before, another example of the intralingual error is she don't play soccer. The students maybe are using a correct, or they are doing a false concept hypothesis of the use of the auxiliary in present simple instead of they say she doesn't. And yeah, that are maybe the sources of the error. Also, we have do lie. Do lie gave us a types of error. The number one is an omission. Number two is addition, and it could be a double marking, regularization, simple addition, misformation. They can be regularization errors, key form, and alternating form, and the last one, misordering. For this research purpose, it is important to know the types of errors that we can find in order to have a better organization in the steps of error analysis that are the ones that follow the slide. So the steps that you have to follow in the error analysis, and the first one is data collection. In this project, I did a written data collection. And then the second step is identify the errors. The errors were identified in the realization of the present simple form. The third step is the quantification of the errors. Number four is the source, that if they are inter or interlingual errors. And the last step is to seek for a remediation based on the type of frequent error. In this case, is to implement the pedagogical intervention. That's the last step. And this for this project, as I mentioned at the beginning, the pedagogical intervention is going to be the focus on form. But before explaining what is about focus on form, here's the evidence that I found. The total of students that were analyzed they were 44 students. I did a questionnaire where the topic it was present simple.
And some of the questions were the following: what do you do in your free time? And the answers were see Netflix. So in this example, we can see the mention of the pronoun. We know that the correct answer in English is I see Netflix. And another one in a question is, how do your friends and you relax after a tiring day? The answers were play video games. Now, again, we see the mention of the pronoun. Instead they say we play video games. So this is an interlingual error. Why? Because in Spanish, we can omit the pronoun, but in English, no. We have to say in every single sentence, we have to introduce, we have to use the pronouns. So the percentage that represent these error, they were students, the 34% of the students did this interlingual error. Another evidence we have in the question, what does your dad do on Mondays? And they answer, he worked in his office. And we here in this error, we can classify it as an omission of the suffixes, S and ES. Instead, the correct answer is he works in his office. And another answer was go to work. And we can see here the omission of the suffix again, S or ES, and the subject too. Instead, we know the correct answer is he goes to work. The percentage that represent the errors that students committed is the 50%. And within the 50% of the students, I already mentioned that is interlingual error. It's an interlingual error because in Spanish we don't have that rule. There's no rule in Spanish where it says that when we are talking about third person of singular, we are going to modify the verb. So that's the reason why I classified it into an interlingual error, because there's an interference. Interference with the Latin language. And then we have the intralingual errors, as I mentioned. This error was within the 50% of the students, and they write answers like I do play video games, or they use I am read a book. Here we can think, or the information says that this could be a false concept hypothesis, because they are not using the correct rule of the auxiliaries or the verb to be. So that's the reason why it's an intralingual error. It's a problem in the same, or it's an error that is in the same target language. It's because of the target language itself. And lastly, the remaining 16% of the students did not represent problems related to the sentence structure. The errors were related to spelling mistakes. As I mentioned, the pedagogical, as part of the error analysis, is the last step to implement or to seek remediation. So the pedagogical intervention is focused on form. And according to Long, the focus on form will be a pedagogical approach to help learners to improve their attention and understanding to the grammatical and linguistic structures of the target language. Also, Long says that focus on form places an emphasis on learners' needs. As a teachers, we have to adapt our activities and explanations of the second language acquisition in order to help and to resolve or focus on the needs of our students. So that's why focus on form is going to help us. And the proposal focus on forms is implement activities and explanation that gives feedback to modify errors.
Jimena, 2 more minutes.
Okay, so and we have techniques. The long-term revision proposed as these techniques. So the ones that I'm going to use in my focus on form remediation is the input enhancement, the interaction enhancement, and the consciousness raising task. The interaction enhancement is a combination of the broadcast and output enhancement. So I think this is going to help me a lot. And you are going to see why I'm going to use that techniques because of this. And There's two types of focus on forms, the reactive and preemptive focus on forms according to Ellis. So the one that I'm going to use is the reactive. Why? Because it occurs in response to an error that a student makes in the context of a communicative activity. And also it could be in two different many different discursal strategies. The one that I'm going to use is implicit. That's the reason why I say that the technique that I'm going to use are these ones. The input, the output, and interaction enhancement, because they are the recast to establish a meaning. And then last one is the conversational. The attention to form arises when dealing with a communication problem resulting in the negotiation of meaning. My objectives, the general, to implement focus on form adjectives to help students from 176 notice and correct their errors in the present simple. The specific, to identify errors after the implementation of focus on form activities in helping students notice and correct their mistakes in the present simple. And to analyze the challenges identifying the implementation of focus on forms activities in helping students notice and correct their mistakes in the present simple. And the last one, to observe students' reactions on perceptions from 76 after the implementation of focus on form activities to help notice and correct their mistakes in present simple. The research question, there are three. One, what errors were identified after the implementation of focus on form activities in helping students notice and correct their mistakes in the present simple. Then number two, what were the challenges identified in the implementation of focus on form activities in helping students notice and correct their mistakes in present simple. And the last one, what are students' perception or reactions from 176 after the implementation of focus on form activities to help notice and correct their mistakes in the present simple. What is important, this thesis, and they need to solve the problem of students making grammatical errors when writing sentences in the present simple, and also to achieve the purposes of the programs that you can see there, because all of them in general, they want to offer a quality and relevant education that prepares students to face the challenges of the 21st century. And also they seek to create meaningful and deep learning instead of just producing disjoining knowledge, memorization, as well as post-evaluation of nation and translation. And also, last one, the students, we want to improve some of the programs seek to develop the students' ability to communicate effectively in Spanish and in a second language in different contexts. The previous studies that I found in Focus on Form is a master paper by Min Seo Yu, where she implements the focus on form in the grammar of Korean students. She said that it was a successful implementation, but on the also she found that maybe the group size and time are factors that would not help the focus on form theory. A research paper by Asispur and Alavina, that is a focus on form versus focus on forms in grammar acquisition of the subjunctive by Iranian advanced EF learners. Here in this research paper, the pedagogical study that helped, it was focused on forms instead of focus on form. She noticed that there were a better improvement using the focus on forms, but also she mentioned that focus on forms help a little percentage of the students where they apply focus on form. And the last one, an article by Odham and Ismail, using focus on form instruction in the teaching and learning grammar in Malaysian classroom. Here, this author mentioned that using focus on form was successful in the grammar of his students. Sorry. And the bibliographic sources are the ones for the contrastive analysis that authors, their analysis, Al-Krashin, Corder, Dulai, Gaselinker, Richard, etc. Focus on form, Ellis in Long and Lord Roads. The methodology, the context, the place is a high school 76. The participants are the first semester group of industrial food production. The level of the English of these students is basic. The age is between 16 and 17 years old, and our classes per week is 3 hours. Type of research is an action research with a mixed approach, qualitative and quantitative collection data, and the scope is descriptive statistics. The procedures, phase 1 is identification of error that I already did. The phase 2 is the pedagogical intervention and focus on form. I'm planning to do it in 4 weeks. And phase 3 is identification again of the error and challenges in the intervention via writing data collection, and then phase number. And the last phase is the students' perceptions by a questionnaire. Those are my references, and thank you for your attention.
Safe. Okay, thank you very much, Jimena. It was safe perfectly. Thank you. And we have time for comments and questions. And Dr. Ramos has some questions and comments. So go ahead, Maggie.
Yes, Jimena and Veronica, congratulations on that study, which it seems that you started like the other way around, but at the same time, yes, you are noticing some errors. You already have some corpus that you have analyzed. And in that sense, my question is, which one was like the most recurrent type of error, the intralingual and the interlingual? And at the same time, what types of errors were like most frequent? Talking about omissions, additions, and so on and so forth. And you will see why I'm asking that. Which ones were like more recurrent and more frequent?
In my error analysis, the one that I did first, it was the omission of the subject, that is the interlingual error, and the other one that is the suffix, the omission of the suffix s and es. They were the most frequent errors.
And why do you think I'm asking about that?
Yes.
Because I don't know, because they are frequent errors in general when we are learning English.
And do you think you need to concentrate, like the teaching part, the implementation part? Do you think you need to concentrate on the most frequent or the least frequent types of errors?
I think that I have to focus on both, but most frequent in order to help the students to shape their communicative skills.
But in terms of if you don't have much more time to concentrate on all the panorama that you mentioned, which ones would you focus more?
In the ones that are more current, the ones that the students repeat a lot.
Okay. And who is going to carry out the implementation, you or the teacher that you observed?
Yeah, it's something that Dr. Veronica always asks me, and I until I know the teacher is going to give me the opportunity to work with the group in that 4 weeks. So I'm going to implement the pedagogical intervention, as far as I know.
Okay, and how do you think that will interfere or could interfere?
Yeah, it could be because students could feel stressful, or they don't want to. Well, maybe they are not going to feel relaxed because it is a change of teacher. So that's the reason why I'm still thinking if I am going to apply the pedagogical intervention or explain to the teacher how to do it.
Okay, yeah. And just to let you know, if if you don't have time, you already have like a study there, because error analysis itself, it could be like a thesis, a complete thesis, like the error analysis itself. Do you agree, Sarah, or do you disagree? I mean, you can just like concentrate on there, and then we'll have your pedagogical proposal. You can like have a very good pedagogical proposal after that analysis. Yes? Are you saying?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ramos.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, well, I just raised my hand. So, yeah, Jimena, your study is very interesting. However, I agree with Maggie. I think you could have a very exhaustive, yeah. Vero is asking for entrance. So yeah, a very interesting descriptive study. And I think that you could present your intervention if you want. However, the description could be more than enough if you have a good taxonomy in order to classify your errors. For example, I just saw that, yeah, the errors in present in simple present are just like the most obvious ones, which are just like the omission of the pronoun, the omission of the suffix, the addition of an auxiliary, the addition of something that is not necessary there. However, I think that you could go beyond with another more complex taxonomy in order to explain why this is happening. I was thinking about, for example, you used Dulai's taxonomy, but there's another guy, I think his name is James, and 1993, he presents another taxonomy, which is a little bit more exhaustive. I don't know if if it fits for your goals. However, you could consider it, and he's more exhaustive. Moreover, I think that if you follow a discoursal strategy instead of a reactive one, you could have more errors there. Because, for example, we didn't see any errors about the negative polarity, which could be also a very interesting topic. How do they construct negative phrases, or how do they construct or conceive interrogative sentences? And a discoursal strategy could also be interesting because they would not react to specific questions or prepare questions, but they could prepare a topic, and maybe just they could have, I'm obsessed with spontaneous speech, but they could have more spontaneous speech. So you could have a more diversity of errors there. I don't know. Just think about that. And a naive question. What about function? I know you concentrate on form. However, I think that simple present is just so beautiful because at the level of the discourse, you can use it to provide any kind of information. I mean, it's not only to say something that you're doing in the present, but you can use it in so many discourse genres with many pragmatic uses. So have you considered I know that maybe you're working with basic level, but have you considered also just like examine the function of the mistakes? I don't know. It's for you to just think about that. And I'm going to zip it now. And I don't know if anyone has, I don't know, Jimena, if you want to react to the comments and questions I have, but that's it.
Now
and then we have Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, in order, as you said, in order to enrich my my project, I could think about the function and expand the diversity of the errors, maybe in the negative form, not just in just simple ones. So yeah, I'm going to consider that, Dr. Sarah. Thank you for your
okay. No, because I was also thinking about, for example, as we have the pro-drop language, so you have the explanation for the omission. But I was thinking, for example, I do play video games. I mean, it's not an error per se, because there could be a specific use for I do play video games if you have the context for the sentence. So that's why I was thinking about the discoursal strategy and maybe also not concentrating or focusing on the function, but yes, considering maybe the function. And yes, Dr. Pepper is here. So sorry, Vero.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I just arrived and I wasn't able to see the presentation, but I was able to like listen to some of the comments.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the main constraints that Jimena had, and I think it also has to do with how data was collected in order to identify the type of errors. So basically, she's not the professor in the class. So I don't know if she mentioned that at the beginning. So she's not the professor. She was just an observer. At the time that she started working with her thesis project, she didn't have a group per se. So she had to start doing something, right? So the initial suggestion was to go to a class that is not even her class. So she was there observing the class, and at that moment, the teacher was teaching present simple. Yes, and they were doing narratives, so they were written narratives. So that's why he was not able to look at like the function, the discourse. Now, if we take into account that if the methodology of the teacher is very structural based, yes, and the teacher was the one who was eliciting the examples that she provided, so that's the data that she obtained. Yes, she used the data, she collected the data based on the elicitations that the teacher did. And if you notice, it's very structural, very question and answer. So she collected that data and she used it to analyze, to identify a language problem. Yes, because since she didn't have like a teaching context, like actually she didn't have job at that moment, and time was clicking. So she needed to start doing something. So she thought about that idea about identifying student error. So that's why it's so, we can say that it's not very complex or it's not very sophisticated, because it wasn't something that she was able to arrange. I mean, she was just basically using what she had, which was only, I wouldn't say that they were narratives, but I would say they were just like elicitations at the teacher, like based on an activity in which students were supposed to answer questions. So that's why there was no possibility to obtain information about how students formulated interrogative constructions, how students formulated negatives and all that. So that's why she was only able to get affirmative sentences, and that's why she only got the most obvious ones, which were the mission, which is like pro-draft, the suffixes, and all that. So your suggestion will be perhaps to collect data again, perhaps? Like, what will be you guys' suggestion? Like, because I mean, she already did the job, like she analyzed the errors and all that. But I mean, she can actually select another group if she's teaching a group now and go back again, así como rewind. Because I mean, the idea was actually to implement focus on form on that specific group that is not even hers. So, I mean, in this case, what do you suggest? Like, go back?
No, Veronica. No, on the contrary, Sarah, can I?
I just saw your face and you said no. Okay. Yeah, Maggie, please go ahead.
On the contrary, we believe that she already worked a lot on collecting the data. If I understood what Dr. Sara is suggesting is that she can have another way of categorizing the errors that she found. And then I believe that she could remain with the same categorization that she already has. But you both can take a decision, yes? And because she already has all that information, it's corpus. And then in order for her to finish on time, what we suggest is that she could just like analyze the errors either with the categorization that Sarah suggests, just to enrich it a little bit more, and have only the pedagogical proposal and that she does not implement it yet if she doesn't have time. If she has time, she can implement it, but with the pedagogical proposal will be like enough, a really good pedagogical proposal. So it is up to you both, I believe.
Okay, so yes, I think I didn't get that part then. So it was like the main suggestion was basically to look for a different type of taxonomy, right?
Yes, it was my suggestion, but it was also, I suggested that I didn't know that it was already the corpus, and that was also one of my questions. If you had just like this pilot study, or it was already the corpus. If it is already the corpus, yes, I think that you could just like consider another taxonomy, a more interesting and exhaustive taxonomy, for example. And yeah, you could present a proposal without the implementation, because the implementation is going to take a long time. So I just suggest that if you want to propose something, you can do it. And if you want to propose also something, you could consider the function there. Well, that's my suggestion. Yeah, but it was a question also if it was already the corpus, or if it was just like a pilot part of the study. But if it's the corpus, it's okay.
The thing is that the corpus was the motivation to come up with the pedagogical intervention. I mean,
which is perfect.
That's why it wasn't very exhaustive, because the main focus of the study is not on error analysis, but on focusing the form as the pedagogical intervention. And the main emphasis was not the error analysis, but we can do it in that way instead, that she can focus on like the description of the error analysis using the corpus that she already has, or that could also be used as a piloting thing, and then do like in another teaching context, a more precise or sophisticated error analysis activity. I mean, I think she can still do that. I mean, at the end, I also have to talk to her, right, if she wants to, but that will be another alternative.
And all of them could be very interesting. I'm a more descriptive researcher, as you know, so an exhaustive description of the errors, for me, it would be just like delicious. However, I know that this master's it's focused on more intervention. This is an action research master's. So if you consider just like a proposal, it could be perfect as well. So I was excited because it was a very interesting topic for me because it has to do with what I do. So that's why I just had so many suggestions about that. But it could be descriptive, or it could be the proposal. And I think the proposal could be more than enough, not the implementation because of the time. And yeah, simple present is a beautiful topic because of all the functions and all the text you can use this tense. So yeah, that's why I intervened so much and so excitedly. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have more questions or comments. Maggie, yeah, go ahead. I just saw the hand.
Make emphasis on the fact that you already have 3 different studies, Veronica and Jimena, and you can go for one and save the others for future studies as conclusions in your thesis, but also for future studies that you can both published. Yes, so you already have the corpus and you can exploit it in many different ways. So congratulations once more.
And Jimena, as a cultural parenthesis, believe me that your thesis director is amazing in publishing with her thesis advice. So people, so yeah, it's just great. This advice is just great. Thank you very much. So I think it's time for our last presentation. And we have Luz Gabriela Ramos Ballesteros, and the title of her thesis is Implementing Formative Assessment in the English as a Foreign Language Program at Universidad Autónoma de de Coahuila, and her thesis director is Dr. Verónica Pimienta. So the stage is all yours, Luz.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Sara, Dr. Vero. I'm the last one, and I know that we're all getting hungry and that we are all, ready to finish this session, but I'm really happy to be here and really happy to get all of your comments on this project that has been really exciting to trying to shape, because I started trying to change the world, and then Dr. Vero helped me to narrow it to become this project that I'm going to present. So yes, this is implementing formative assessment in the EFL program at Universidad Autónoma de Coahuila. Okay, so as part of the introduction, I will talk about assessment. I will talk about professors at WADEC, and also about the model of instruction that is currently being used. The assessment, we know, is something fundamental in teaching and learning, in the teaching and learning process. Also, we consider assessment as part of the everyday activity in our classes, and this is something that we use to monitor and report students in the to monitor our students' progress, right? And in my teaching context, this type of assessment can be only focused on a summative instead of a formative assessment. So this research project explores the role of formative assessment in this English program. And this will be an action research that will focus on the study of the implementation and training of formative assessment within our English program in Universidad Autónoma de Coahuila. The primary objectives are, first, to integrate formative assessment strategies into the existing curriculum, and second, to provide comprehensive training for English professors at WADEC on the effective use of these strategies in language learning. Professors at WADEC, as Miguel was explaining or projecting, in Universidad Autónoma de Coahuila, we have different units, academic units, and in this case, I'm going to focus only on in Unidad Saltillo. So in this case, the English program is called Inglés Institucional, and it was created in 2008, and we teach English to learners who are taking, who are enrolled in the university. So we teach them from first semester to fifth semester, and around each semester we have around 5,000 students taking English, and professors, we have around 55 teachers who are giving instruction during a semester. So through a combination of this practical implementation and targeted professional development, this research aspires to establish a model of instruction that not only improves language proficiency, but also enhances the overall quality of education in our university. The model of instruction that we currently have, we don't have any academic official policy to follow. So it's basically book-based. We teach the contents that are in our books, and we follow them, and we aim to get students from a level A1 to level B1, which in the end they are going to be tested in a proficiency exam. The general objectives of this research is to implement formative assessment in this program, and also to train professors of English at WADEC in the employment of this formative assessment in their practices. The specific objectives of the research will be to analyze the implementation of formative assessment strategies employed by teachers here in WADEC before and after the training, and also to identify the advantages and disadvantages in the implementation of formative assessment tools, And finally, to observe students and teachers' perceptions towards implementation of formative assessment in the EFL program. Here we have the research questions, which will be the first one to understand or to find what formative assessment strategies were employed by English teachers at WADEC before and after the training, and also to find out what advantages and disadvantages were identified in the implementation of formative assessment tools in our program. And finally, what were students and teachers' perceptions towards the implementation of formative assessment in our program. So these three elements, we have the strategies, we have the advantages and disadvantages, and also we have the perceptions. Strategies before and after. I'm currently working in the academic department of the English program. So through periodical observation, I have seen that, well, the teaching practices are, since there is no policy, I mean, the teachers try whatever they think it's okay with the students. And there have been attempts to implement different techniques for teaching, and I have seen that, well, not everyone obtains best results with these techniques. So this would be like a way to see if this works or not in our teaching context. The advantages and disadvantages, well, there are a lot of limits and barriers on the implementation of different techniques, especially because there are many students that we have each semester. But I think that professors and also teachers, professors and students also need to be taken into account. That's why the importance of seeing their perceptions towards this implementation. And if we are looking for students to become autonomous learners, I mean, they also have to take part in the process of knowing how they learn best. In Universidad Autónoma de Coahuila, well, in its institutional development plan, they created the program, the English curricular program, in 2007, and it was created in response of society's needs to compete also with other private schools, and also because it became really important that learners can graduate with a sufficient level of English. So in the Modelo Educativo in Universidad Autónoma de Coahuila, they followed the constructivist and humanist approach that is based on Jacques Delors' name, the 4 pillars of education, that is learning to know, learning to do, learning to live, and learning to be. According to this, well, the challenge that we face is that the way of testing or the way of assessing students' abilities in this second language, in this foreign language, is that we are just testing what the students know about the language. That is based on the first pillar of education, that is learning to know. We only evaluate discrete point elements, and we do not reflect on the competences of the students. This declarative knowledge of grammar, well, it's evaluated through different periodic exams, multiple choice tests that the teachers just focus on receiving a grade or giving a grade, and they don't focus on providing different tools during the process, and they just focus on giving a final mark. And homeworks and assignments are just evaluated by completion and not by the quality of work that the student proves to do in the process or in the semester. In this case, well, it was observed that teachers only teach, and they do not pay attention if learners actually learn what was that they were teaching. Also, there is no feedback that teachers give. They just give the number, and all of these different aspects are really, really related to a summative assessment and not to the formative assessment that is the the topic that I want to implement. In this case, we have some definitions of formative assessment, and Brown defines formative assessment as evaluating students in the process of forming their competencies and skills with the goal of helping them to continue their growing process or their growth. And in this case, well, teachers get the opportunity to collect evidence during their lessons. But the important thing to do here is that teachers may know what a student can do or not, but they also need to use that information to adjust the instruction. And that is something that has not yet been seen in our classrooms. And also, well, in this case, formative assessment is considered to be assessment for learning. And the one that has been seen in our teaching context is just summative assessment, that is assessment of the learner. Here, again, the types of strategies that were seen in previous studies, they consider, well, these previous studies considered, or I use them to select information about teachers, about learners, and about the tools that they used in this formative strategy. And learners in these studies show a positive attitude towards formative assessment, but they still have they're still fond of multiple choice tests. They think this is the only way that they can be evaluated. And also some studies reflected that the impact of formative assessment can be on academic motivation, on attitude towards the learning process, on test anxiety, and also on self-regulation skill. On the contrary, well, the teachers, the perceptions of teachers in these studies are that they still feel confused. They feel that there's no guideline. They may collect the evidence during the process of the lesson, but they don't know what to do with that evidence. So training is something that the studies recommend. And I think this is also very important, as in previous presentations. We're discussing about the tools, right? Not only if you have the tool, it means that the teacher is going to know what to do with the tool, or the thing is done. I think also formative assessment is a skill that teachers need to develop, and training is one of the ways to provide a solution for that. Some other studies and basic bibliography about classroom assessment, about classroom practices, about educación humanista, something based on the current policies of education. The methodology for this research, well, it would be in a context of undergraduate teachers and students of English here at UADEC, specifically in Unidad Saltillo. The participants of this study will be 10 teachers and one of their teaching group, approximately like 350 students, and they will be used a convenient sampling technique. At this point, I still don't know if I have the opportunity to invite all of the teachers to this training, but I think that this is a reasonable number of participants, and this study will be conducted.
Luz, sorry.
My time's over?
No, 2 more minutes.
Okay. The study will be an action research, and it will be conducted by employing a mixed methods approach that combines the qualitative and the quantitative methods. And the data collection will be through questionnaires and through interviews and observations, again, before and after the training. First of all, there will be a time to analyze the type of testing strategies that are currently employed by teachers before the formative assessment training, then train teachers on formative assessment, then also identify the strategies that the teachers actually employed, and observe advantages and disadvantages while using this type of assessment. And finally, to observe students and teachers' perceptions after the implementation of formative assessment. These are my references for the presentation, and that will be all.
Thank you very much, Luz. I'm going to stop your presentation so that I can see better who wants to make some comments or ask some questions. So anyone? No. Miguel, it was an applause. I thought it was just like you were raising your hand. Yeah, Dr. Mockford, go ahead, please. Jerry, your microphone is mute.
I'm sorry. Just a question. Is assessment necessarily subjective? Because, you know, we think of testing as objective, it can be, but would that be a particular challenge for your thesis? That, you know, you've got different teachers. Is it possible to have some sort of common denominator on assessments?
Like, for example, the type of assessment that is implemented, or like just the definition, the difference in testing and assessing?
Well, I was thinking when you were talking about anxiety.
Okay,
if you're assessing anxiety or motivation, etc. Is it? I mean, it's not a criticism. It's like a challenge of doing it. I mean, is it possible to make comparisons if it is subjective?
Okay.
Sorry, I think there was a misunderstanding. When she mentioned anxiety and motivation, I think it was based on some of the previous studies that have been conducted. And she was mentioning that these instruments normally tend to also obtain information about students' feelings, but it's not particularly her objective in this study.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions or comments for Luz? Sonny, you could say it aloud. I mean, it's it's perfectly normal. Yeah. But I agree with Sonny. The topic is exciting and the research design is very well structured. I think that we can see Vero behind it, right? Very well structured, yes. Sorry, Vero, but it's true. I mean, I can see Vero there, just like, okay. And any more questions or comments for Luz? I am sorry because this is not one of my fields, so I really cannot provide any useful comments, but I just saw that it was methodologically, it was just like very well designed. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, if there are no more questions, no comments, so I thank you very much, all of you, for being here. I think it was a very successful and enriching session. Tomorrow, we're going to continue with the second part of this colloquium, 9 o'clock. And well, that's going to be it. And of course, next week, we're going to have elective 2 with Dr. Dixie Santana. So that's going to be very interesting. Okay, so guys, thank you very much. Sonia, I think we could stop the